I know for myself, sometimes that drive, that need to get something accomplished, and we bypass that skill of connecting with somebody else, that skill of empathy. Our next speaker runs the behavior design track at MadPow. Dustin DiTommasso is here to talk today. He works with a team at MadPow examining behavior change as it relates to health, as it relates to technology, as it relates to design. And he is here to share skills, specific tools, strategies that we can use to bring behavior change, behavior design, ways of motivating change into our practices, into the people that we serve. Please welcome Dustin DiTommasso.
Good afternoon. So I am a designer and a researcher, and my team and I, as Robin mentioned, look at this overlap of behavioral science, motivational psychology, design, and technology to facilitate both behavior change and human flourishing. And we do this every day. We work with clients, we work with researchers. It's what gets us up in the morning, it's what gets us out of bed. It's that motivation to do this kind of work that continues us and pushes us along the day to do the things we love doing. And very likely, that's the same thing that gets you up out of the bed every day and pushes you to continue on throughout your days. I love motivation. I love thinking about motivation and finding ways to design for motivation to create lasting change that people want to do, whether those are products, interventions, services, or programs, thinking about how we can leverage motivation in a conducive way to get people to enact in behaviors that are beneficial to them and also wanted to be done by the folks that are the targets of the interventions that we create. So we're all on the same page when we think about motivation and what motivation is. Simply the processes that give behavior its energy and direction. And traditionally, psychologists, economists, people on the street tend to think of motivation as a unitary concept, right? You can have more motivation or less motivation. And any of us working in this space would really love for our patients, the people around us, our coworkers, to have more motivation for the things we would like them to do, right? But it's not the quantity of motivation that matters the most. It's actually the quality of motivation, and that's what I'm going to talk to today. You can't get to the quality of motivation by focusing on the quantity, and that quality of motivation is what produces a quality of behavior and leads to sustained behavior change and engagement. So I would propose that quality is more important than quantity when you think about designing for behavior change. And let me explain it this way. We can be moved into action by many different things, right? We could be moved by someone saying, do this, or else I'm going to whack you with this stick. That is definitely motivation, but it's not a good quality of motivation. When we are pressured or coerced into behaving, within us is a sense of tension, anxiety, stress that does not lead to sustained or volitional behavior or engagement. Whereas on the other side, when we are doing things that we feel are important to us, where we are interested in doing those things, things that tie to our values, beliefs, things we like to do, it's a much different kind of motivation, right? You can imagine the feeling of that is a much different effect when we're doing the behavior. At that moment we're doing it, we are endorsing the doing of that behavior. So volition, willingness, choice, and endorsement. If we look at designing systems, services, our interpersonal relationships, and to foster this kind of motivation, we are setting ourselves up for looking at doing much better quality, much more sustained behavior change, right? And that intrinsic motivation, that quality, that volition, is very much like the prototypical example of kids playing, right? No one needs to whip a child to get them to play, right? So with that kind of autonomous motivation, motivation that comes from within versus controlled motivation, that pressure or coercion that comes from things like control, rewards, incentives, stress, things like that. I would argue again that autonomy is greater than control for designing effective systems. When we think about where we've come, and we think about what used to be the dominant theory of behavior from the 50s to the 70s, when we think about operant conditioning, that our behaviors are manipulated by rewards and controls in the environment, and where we've come today is a huge difference, right? I wouldn't argue that this kind of model, rewards and punishments in the environment, does not predict behavior. The problem with it is that in real life, we don't have the ability to control what happens outside in a person's environment to the scale that you do within a lab. Beyond that, in the real world, oops, I'm going the wrong way. People have choices, right? If they don't like the cage that they're in, they will escape that cage. Each and every one of you here in this room, you have the opportunity to look at Facebook, check your phone, or do whatever you want to do. You can get up and leave. You are free to enact those choices that you want to do. You are not trapped within this cage, right? So in the real world, we have those kinds of choices. And that's the huge difference, or this fundamental shift in thinking about motivation from something that is done to people or organisms from the outside to trying to shift the thinking to bring out motivation from within people, right? To focus on those internal motives, focusing on needs, cognitions, emotions, to bring out what is inherently within. And that's what Richard Ryan from Rochester University calls a Copernican shift in motivational thinking, right? That shift from extrinsic focused methods of control to intrinsic, more autonomous focus of motivation. And to do this, the way that we go about this, you can get a lot of research and a lot of techniques from self-determination theory, which is Richard Ryan and Desi's model of psychology. Probably the most empirically tested model of motivational psychology over the last 40 or so years. And what this model does is it states that we have universal basic needs that we need to fulfill in order to feel a sense of volition, a sense of engagement, a sense of endorsement and well-being for the things that we're doing. To fulfill these basic needs, there are three. The need for competence, right? So the experience of feeling masterful and growing over your abilities over time. The experience of autonomy or volitional engagement, being the source in the control of the behaviors that you are doing. And that sense of relatedness, which is a meaningful connection with others, to feel cared for and to care for others within your social environment. If we can satisfy these needs, we can start to design systems and personal interactions to move people to autonomous and sustained behavior change. And these needs are objective, not subjective, right? So it's like vitamin C. We might disagree with some of the side effects of vitamin C, but if we don't get any, we're very likely to get scurvy, right? They are these needs that are in each and every one of us to fulfill. And that fits in with all the other adaptive, physical, and learned social needs that we have, right? It fits right in to this connection to fulfill us and to fill our needs. And why is this important, and what can we do with it? So when we think about how to apply that to systems, services again, we think about designing interactions, designing products that can fulfill those needs for autonomy, for competence, and relatedness, right? So we like to call this need-satisfying experiences. So going about the development, the testing of products, services to fulfill those needs. And those needs lie on a continuum, right? So from controlled motivation on one side to autonomous motivation on the other side, We want to move people through this process, a natural process of bringing outside or controlled motivation to the inside, right? To autonomous motivation over time to get to that level of intrinsic motivation, right? So when we look at this continuum, when we look all the way to, I guess it's your left side, external, right? That's where we have the rat in the cage, right? Those are those rewards and punishments within the environment. When we start to bring it in closer to the sense of self, we have motives that are driven by guilt and anxiety or pride and ego fulfillment. So for example, I could feel really bad about myself if I do a poor job with this talk today, right? This talk that I've prepared. Or I could feel great if you all start clapping and rush the stage after. Yeah, thanks, right? You're very, very supportive. Right? So that sense of introjection is a motivator and can predict behavior. However, with it comes a sense of more frustration, more setbacks in the face of challenges, a sense of neuroticism, lowered well-being. It's not exactly the kinds of tools that we want to use within our designs. When we think about going a little more into autonomous motivation, we have what's identified motivation, right? This is the start of designing for lasting behavior change, right? This is where we can instill the values and the sense of personal importance to the behaviors that we are trying to get people to either shift or to adapt, right? So think of it as someone who's running on a treadmill, right? If I'm running on a treadmill, probably the most boring thing in the world, but if I believe it is beneficial to my health, if it sits in with my importance, my values, I am more likely to do that behavior and to do that behavior over time, right? So it becomes part of my belief system. I believe that taking care of myself physically is a good thing to do. When we shift a little further into that continuum of intrinsic motivation, we think about integrated. It's very similar, but now it sits within the whole host of other values and beliefs that we carry around from day to day, right? So thinking about running again, it's that difference between someone who runs and someone who calls themselves a runner, right? People who are runners, self-identify as runners, are out running every day, no matter what time, in the rain with short shorts on in the middle of the snow here in New England. They're out. You see them, you call them crazy, but they are runners, right? Big difference. If it's snowing out or raining out for me, I'm very much more likely to decide to, I don't need to run today. It's fine. I'll wait till tomorrow. So there's a huge difference. I've not integrated that behavior into my sense of self. And again, all the way on the right is that intrinsic motivation, right? That sense of play. And that sense of play is a lifelong behavior in a lifelong sense, right? It starts as we're children and does carry out until we're old. If we can find those connections to making things fun, to making things interesting, we've got a good shot to pull that engagement and pull that intrinsic motivation and that internalization over time. This is why well-designed games can be a tool for behavior change, right? Not so much gamification specifically, too many focus on extrinsic rewards, but moving that sense of play and value closer to internal. So I would argue, again, that autonomous motivation is much more effective than controlled motivation. And when we think about that in terms of behaviors to remember, when we think about autonomous motivation, its effect on behaviors means that those behaviors are chosen and volitional, which is very important for sustained change. And those behaviors are performed for their inherent value, right? We find value within those behaviors that we're enacting at the time we're enacting them, versus controlled, where we are pressured or coerced, or that those behaviors are performed for a separable outcome, like a reward, like cash, like something outside of our sense of self, and that tends to erode the ability to internalize the value of those behaviors, number one. And then number two, once you remove those rewards or those extrinsic motivators, those behaviors typically cease, right? So those are the two dangers there. We want to focus on autonomous motivation over controlled motivation. So how do we do that? How do we start to use that as a framework that you guys can use too in the products that you design, in the services that you offer, in your relationships with other people? When we think about designing for autonomy, we want to make sure that the content and the functionality of what we're doing is relevant to the individual, providing a meaningful rationale for any tasks or behaviors that we're asking people to do helps arise that sense of self-endorsement. It's also kind of polite to do as well. When you ask someone to do something, you give them a reason or a rationale behind why we think you should do this or why this is good or beneficial for you, right? Along with that rationale, providing a sense of choice, right? Allowing people to do things in the way that they want to do them, giving them a menu of options of things to choose from that may all be beneficial, allowing them to express that sense of autonomy over the choices or the provisioned ideas that you have for other people. And then avoiding control in the language that either comes up from the system, if it's an app, a website, whatever, or the language that you use when talking to other people. Avoiding things like shoulds, musts, have-tos, right? Keeping that open and keeping that sense of choice and avoidance of control low helps people express and fulfill their need for autonomy. When we think about designing for competence, right? Making sure that there is a clear expectations of what we are asking folks to do and what their target are for considered success with goals or behaviors that you want them to complete. So when we think about linking goals to behavioral outcomes or to steps to achieve goals, laying those out in a clear, understandable manner for the people that we are serving with the programs that we are designing for them. Setting up this idea of optimal challenge, right? Again, having the right level of difficulty or the right level of challenge for the individuals that we are designing for. Being able to tailor content, being able to tailor challenge, we know through digital tools is definitely a much more effective and a more engaging way to reach people and bring them along that path than a one-size-fits-all when interacting with technology. So if we can create a learnable machine learning rules engine system that can tailor, that can offer the right level of challenge, pushing forward, pulling back when necessary, you've got a nice mechanic for helping people fulfill that sense of competence. Behavior change is a skills development practice, right? Helping people overcome those barriers, helping them get better at the things they want to get better at, and overcoming those barriers that they need to get out of the way in order for change to happen. And feedback, I can't stress the importance of feedback enough, right? Informational feedback that shows where they are, what their progress is, what their stats are, compared to some kind of comparator, a national guideline, where they were last week, where they were last year, others that are like them, leveraging social proof. Giving that sense of progress in performance in a non-judgmental way, just showing the facts, is huge. But not only just comparison feedback, feedback needs to do a few other things as well. We spend a lot of time writing the rules, designing the feedback loops for the actions or behaviors that people take within the interventions that we design. That feedback needs to do a few things beyond just progress. We want that feedback to instill a sense of positive emotion so people feel like they want to do more, right? We want it to feel like it has increased their abilities, that they've learned something, that they've developed something new, that they've made themselves in some way a little bit better than they were last time, right? So that they feel like they can do more, right? That sense of empowerment. And then always having a call to action to show them that menu of options we talked about, to show them that there's more to do. These things together, this system, I want to do more, I can do more, and hey, look, there's more to do, creates a nice virtuous feedback loop for folks to get engaged, to stay engaged, to feel like they're making progress, towards the goals that they hopefully have been co-creators of in facilitating change. When we think about designing for relatedness, we love to use technology and systems to help people connect with each other, both through the tools that we design, through the technology, but also in the real world. Can what we design help people enrich their relationships with others around them? And or can they fulfill some of those needs through the tools that we design? The idea of collaboration, right, versus competition, for example, goes a long way too. Can we create shared goals, shared support systems, so people can help other people within the systems that we design as well? Setting up collaborative goals where every individual's progress affects the achievement of the overarching goal is a really nice technique to think about if you can design that in appropriately. Making sure, again, that that content is personal to them and relevant to them. Understanding your target audience, having some empathy for what they're going through and what they're looking to achieve. If you can tailor that, if you can make that feel personable and personalized, great way to go. And then again, as Amy mentioned, having that empathy, not only as a creator, as a designer, but also delivering that through the voice and tone in the way that your system interacts or supports the people that are going through whatever change that might be. So what does this look like for us? When we think about taking that set of design principles, designing for competence, autonomy, and relatedness, and applying those to the design process, really quick example that we can show you is this is Hot Seat. It's a product that we designed a bit ago for a client. It is a mobile app that was designed to combat sitting disease, right? So to knock down sedentary behavior within a workplace environment, right? Specifically. If we look at some of the design choices we made to fulfill those needs, we can see a few things, right? Very simply, I'll explain very simply. What it does is the app scrapes your calendar on your mobile phone. It looks for opportune moments within the day to give you a very small, achievable 2-minute break, a physical activity break that you can take, and it gives you an alert to take that 2-minute break. You can say, no, just don't worry about my schedule, interrupt me randomly throughout the day. We nudge you towards a recommended guideline, 150 minutes per week, and then we designed this very simple game mechanic within this to keep people engaged, which is if you get 16 minutes of activity, your bar fills up, which you'll see, you earn the right to pass that activity to somebody else in your workplace environment. So if you can't take that at the moment, you can send it to somebody collaboratively to do it. Or if I know, for example, that Virgil is in a meeting or on the phone and can't do it, I could be a little nefarious and send that his way, right? So and knock out his stats for the day. So it's a little bit of play, that little bit of interest, strategy, and engagement to keep it interesting and moving. But at its core, at its heart, we give you a bank of activities, cardio, stretching, strength. We allow you to choose only those activities that you are comfortable and capable of doing in the workplace. If you're too embarrassed to do Gangnam dancing, then we don't, you'll never see that come up, right? Set that level that is attuned to you. 1 break is fine, or 10 breaks, or 20 breaks, whatever is right for you, having that autonomy to come in where you are ready. We will nudge you along and make recommendations, but you do not have to listen to it. You can keep it on track where you are. Again, that ability to also set safeguards. Don't send me a nudge at 7 p.m. Don't send me a nudge on the weekend. This is when my commute is. So you can set it up and personalize it very quickly to get going. We then give you those breaks, right? We show you exactly what you need to do, how that activity is done, both the how to do it and the why to do it, why it's good for you and how to do it, fulfilling that sense of competence. We give you feedback, varied feedback, to show what you've done, a little bit of positive encouragement or praise. We use some humor here. We show your progress over day with that activity bar, And then we show your highlights, personal streaks or best of moments, right? Instilling that sense of competence over time. And again, we allow you to not only play or interact with the people within your work environment, but we also allow you to invite your friends, your family, your close ones, because the people at your work may be great, but they may not be the people you're having that fulfillment of relatedness with, right? They may not be the closest people to you. So we allow you to have that option. And when we look at how this plays out when we run controlled trials on or experiments on our products, for this one we did a pilot with American Heart Association for 3 months to test this out. Intervention of hot seat versus the status quo, right, which is typically a couple posters, maybe an email from HR that says, you know, being more physically active is good for you, right? So the game versus status quo messaging around why you should be active. What we found within that pilot was that during those 3 months, 2/3 of that population maintained getting up and taking more breaks over time. 80% of those took breaks throughout the duration of those 12 weeks. 2/3 of those folks would recommend that to others. We see that autonomy competence comes through within qualitative analysis too. When we heard what people liked, the features about being able to choose those activities, 81%. The ability to set the number of breaks per day, the ability to set the days and hours. You typically see that this comes through in the testing that you do as well. Those needs, when they are fulfilled, come back to you. And quotes as well, right? It went from planking to kettlebells to hiking, this spillover effect growing, and that sense of relatedness, bonding us and giving us a chance to do something outside of work. Oops, wrong way again. So in summary, motivation matters. The quality of motivation matters more than the quantity of motivation. Thinking about that process of internalization and thinking about the idea that autonomous motivation is person-centered. I think when we focus too greatly on extrinsic rewards, punishments, introjected guilt or shame, that we're not really being person-centered, even if some of those objectives do help to meet certain short-term behavior goals. So thinking about how to do this to support autonomy, to support volitional engagement and willingness to act, I think carries you out much further along all our collective goals for designing for personal lasting change. Thank you.